So after much hype, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire is now officially released in theaters. And what are my overall thoughts on this movie? Well, first of all, I hope you guys don't mind the new format that I'm doing for this video. I have a bunch of transitions going on in terms of my YouTube setup and just life in general, so I won't be able to have my ugly face on camera right now. However, let's make do with what we got right now, and let's get into this review of Godzilla x Kong, or I'm sorry, video essay. The Monsterverse. The Monsterverse has been something that's constantly been evolving and changing over time. We had Godzilla 2014, which was much more of a serious monster movie that just happened to lack a lot of Godzilla. We had Kong Skull Island, which had a pretty good blend of humans, along with fun, action, and King Kong. Arguably probably still the best in the Monsterverse, but we will see. Then we had Godzilla King of the Monsters, which had a lot more Godzilla and a lot of human elements in there as well. In terms of overall audience reception to that one is like the least by a lot of people so far. Then Godzilla vs. Kong came out, and Godzilla vs. Kong was a game changer. People really loved that one a lot, and I myself enjoyed it as much as everybody else. It had a lot of monster action, had a lot of Godzilla and Kong in there. And so Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire came out with two new original created monsters. Adam Wingard said that he wanted to make this a huge 1 hour and something minute toy commercial. And did he succeed in doing so? Silly. One word I can describe Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire is that it is an extremely silly movie. However, it is still a ton of fun if you look at it for what it is, and that is, it's just meant to be Monsters WWE. It's not meant to be taken super serious. It's not meant to have deep written human characters or stellar dialogue or amazing ground-changing plot. As a matter of fact, I think one mistake for this movie is the fact that it released so close to Godzilla -1, which was much more of a serious monster movie and in its own right, probably even a masterpiece. Of course, this movie is going to have drawn comparisons to that movie, but if you look at it for what it is, and that this movie is much more like the Showa-era Godzilla movies, it succeeds in a lot of aspects. There's a lot of fun ideas that are thrown in this movie. Kong. Much like the prior movie, this movie is much more King Kong centered, and even more so than the other movie, and I think that's actually to the movie's benefit. Adam Wingard, in terms of monsters, knows how to direct these creatures very well, especially with how the monsters express emotions and character acting through CGI. I love the idea that we get to see King Kong creating traps in the movie. He's getting smarter and evolving with his strategies since he's been in the Hollow Earth. He's a much better fighter than the last movie, so you notice that he's constantly evolving in this movie. And also, I love his interactions with some of the creatures, especially with moments like Doug trying to steal his food, or even having his interactions with the other Kongs who are a lot more aggressive towards him. He doesn't take no crap from them. He absolutely just beats the mess out of them if they try to mess with him. The way he displays fear and, uncertainty in multiple moments, I think is very well done, especially when we meet Zuko. He doesn't know what to make of this tiny little guy. He tries to get along with him, and when Zuko does retaliate, he doesn't take any mess with him. He tries to, help this kid out. He doesn't think twice in terms of like feeding him or anything. But when Zuko tries to set him up, he beats the mess out of him. And you know what? I really like Kong in this movie. But a main hero is only as good as his villain, and our next topic is Scar King. Scar King was a huge highlight in this movie. I really do think he's a really cool original creation in this movie. I like the personality that they had for Scar King. He's a lot more sinister. He's a lot more evil and twisted. He's a little bit more maniacal, and he's constantly scheming, especially like his first interaction when he meets Kong for the first time. He just kind of sizes him up a bit. He laughs at him. He mocks him. Also, when one of the other apes tries to defend Zuko, he kicks one of them into the fire. He's very evil in this movie, and I think they displayed that very well, especially in the way that he kind of enslaves these Kong people, more reinforced with the fact that he has a skeletal whip that he uses to whip these Kongs. I thought that was really awesome that they gave that as a weapon to him, but all in all, I don't think that I felt any sense of urgency with his character. I think that he's not very threatening to me. Especially since this is just a Godzilla and Kong movie. And since the Godzilla and Kong movie, Godzilla being in the title, I didn't really feel any threat from Scar King. I mean, Kong was able to actually even physically overpower Scar King, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, if he's able to do that, then he has no chance against Godzilla. Even displayed in their final battle of the movie, he really had no chance up against this characters. But Scar King knew that, and he came with reinforcements, which is where we're going to talk about Shimo. Shimo was being hyped up a lot in this movie, and for a character that was being hyped up, Shimo really didn't get a lot of screen time in this movie. I can't say that's another issue I had with it as well. I do think that in terms of the character design, I think it looked way better than what the merchandising was putting out. Worked very well on screen. Very great creature design. I love the idea of an ice titan that was the original Titan, and possibly even the Titan that froze Ghidorah. And this also potentially was the main reason why Godzilla was constantly upgrading through the movie, was to fight Shimo. But that's neither here nor there. Shimo, I think, is a great character, and, you know, especially being slaved with Scar King's whip crystal that he's using to control Shimo, which is his secret weapon to keep the Kongs in check and even to use against Godzilla. I think that's really cool, but really didn't serve much purpose to the movie overall, and the lack of screen time really didn't do the creature any favors. And in mentioning Godzilla, let's go ahead and talk about the big G in this movie. Godzilla in this movie was really not in this movie a super ton, but for the moments he was in the movie, I think he shined very well. He's a creature that just gets in and gets stuff done. He runs in, beats up monsters, takes their territory, and just leaves. He is a walking beast in this movie. I especially love moments like at the beginning where he fights Skyla and kills Skyla. I thought that was really cool, especially using the Kiss of Death move he used on one of the Mutos. Even moments like fighting Tiamat to take the territory to upgrade. I thought that was a really cool moment, very good action sequence in the movie. And absorbing that radiation, of course, Godzilla has a newer design in this movie, having pink dorsal fins and slimming out his body dramatically.
Come on, Barbie, let's go party.
And it's a really cool upgrade. I think that seeing it in action, I really do love this design a lot. And even in terms of like Godzilla rankings, I think that design goes up a super ton. However, that being said, Godzilla really did not have a bunch of screen time in this movie. And you can kind of tell that this movie probably used to be a Son of Kong movie, where Kong meets Zuko, then fights Scar King, and then becomes King of the Monsters in the Hollow Earth. And that's when he becomes King Kong. I could see that, and it feels like Godzilla was just kind of thrown in there, and then they were like, okay, if Godzilla's in here, we need another threat, so they threw Shimo in there. Then they're like, okay, then let's throw in all these other things. Like, the biggest problem with this movie is the fact that there was not a super ton of structure in terms of its story. Ultimately, the story really didn't matter too much, considering the fact that we had so much monster action in this movie. A lot of the story just really didn't matter. I mean, there was a super ton of monsters. Like, even watching the story, I didn't feel like it really dragged at all. Like, it just kept moving to get us to the monster action, and it worked extremely, extremely well. And of course, in this movie, we do get a rematch between Kong and Godzilla, in which Kong actually did very well in this fight, where that Beast Gauntlet that he was given as an upgrade due to the frostbite that he got from Shimo, he actually did very well against Godzilla. I was actually impressed. He threw sand in his face. He was using moments to use cover and knock him down. I think he even knocked him unconscious for a split second. But ultimately, this fight does still display that even with that Beast Gauntlet, Godzilla is still a superior monster in terms of strength. He really laid the smackdown on him, throwing in moments where he tackles him through the pyramids, or even uses a suplex on Kong, which I thought was the coolest move in the whole movie. Don't at me.
And look at Randy Orton slithering.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
And he was about to finish him until Mothra steps in, and I thought the little reunion that they had, Mothra and Godzilla, was a really cute moment. I thought it was cool how they had Mothra as backup, kind of webbing up the apes while Godzilla and Kong were fighting Shimo and Scar King. It was a really cool tag team match. The action in this movie is phenomenal. But to me, it really lacks impact because, again, I really don't feel any threat from Scar King. Human characters. I saved this category for last because the human characters in this movie are really not anything special. The story is actually worse than Godzilla vs. Kong, but in it being worse, there's actually far less of them and of that story in said movie.
Nobody cares.
And with there being less of all those aspects and having a lot more monsters in here and the flow being quick, it's really not that big of a deal to me. And this really is just a 1 hour and something minute toy commercial. It's actually a super amount of fun. In conclusion, Godzilla x Kong is a phenomenal creature flick. It's good to go and see in theaters and grab some popcorn with your friends or your date and go in there and just watch it and have a good time. It's not meant to be taken super seriously. This is very much a show era Godzilla movie, but more modernized, and you know, it has a lot more of a Hollywood budget involved. I think a lot of the moments in the story that work the best are definitely the monsters and their interactions with one another and the way they emote, the way they fight. I think that's phenomenal in this movie. And the human characters, again, are non-existent in this movie. They're not human characters. They're just plot devices, I guess, from point A to point B. I still think it works pretty well. Although I do think for the next movie, the best way to handle that one is to end it with this last movie. And then also tone down the silliness just a tad. I think those elements would work. But all in all, Godzilla and Kong is a fun ride, and I highly recommend that you check it out if you're just trying to turn your brain off and have some mindless monster mayhem.